Hey everybody! Today we're going to be talking about section 6.2, which is about global energy consumption, which is just a fancy way of saying global energy use. So the learning objective for today is that you'll be able to describe the trends in energy consumption. Some of the essential knowledge that you'll gain is how energy resources are distributed between developing and developed countries, some of the types of energy resources that we are used, like fossil fuels and other ones that we'll talk about, and then kind of how the government can be involved in regulating all of these. So we'll first start with talking about developed versus developing countries and what this energy consumption looks like. So developed nations, such as the United States, are going to use more energy on a per capita, so per person basis. But developed nations are going to use more total energy because they have higher populations than developed nations do. Now, if we use the United States as an example, the average United States resident uses 5 times as much energy as the world average. So if you look here on energy use per capita at all of these different countries, you can compare Canada and the US and France to like Brazil and China and Bangladesh, which we are going to be more developed, and countries like Brazil and China and Bangladesh are going to be more developing. So you can see the energy use per capita and how it greatly increases when a country is more developed. Now, something that's important to keep in mind is that developing nations, they're still in the process of industrializing and their population is still growing rapidly, which we talked a lot about this in Unit 3 stuff. So it's important when we're thinking about the future energy use that we're aware that in these developing nations, as they become more industrialized, this energy use per capita is going to be increasing as their residents are going to be achieving higher standards of living. So if we look here at this diagram, we've got historically the world like energy consumption versus projected. And if we're looking at these countries in red, these are going to be the ones that currently are developing, and their future projected energy use, it is going to be increasing quite a bit in those countries, but also on a global scale. And then if we look at the population of these countries, we're looking at the less developed countries up here in the green. And not only are they going to be using more energy per capita, they also are going to have more people. So we need to be aware of where this global energy consumption is currently at, but where it is going in the future. So we're going to start with talking about fossil fuels because fossil fuels globally are the most used energy source. By far, they're the most used energy source. If we look at this diagram here, we've got oil, coal, natural gas, which all together are kind of the 3 that are lumped under fossil fuels. And then down here on the bottom, we've got all the others like hydropower from dams, nuclear, wind, solar, things like that. And you can see that clearly globally, fossil fuels are very much being used the most. So we've got these 3 that I just mentioned, and they're used kind of for different purposes. So the first, oil, is predominantly used in gasoline as fuel for vehicles. Coal is mostly used for electricity generation, for giving electricity to cities so that they can have their lights on and heaters running. Natural gas is used as a secondary fuel for electricity generation, and it's pretty common for heating. So if you think of a like natural gas furnace, which is very common in most houses in the United States, this is going to be natural gas that's going to be powering it. But again, these are all still under the umbrella of fossil fuels. So hydroelectric energy, which we will learn much more about later in this unit, is going to be the second largest source. This is where we use dams to generate electricity. And basically the way that it works is water is going to spin a turbine. The spinning turbine is going to be what generates electricity. And fun fact, here in Washington State, because of our massive rivers like the Snake and the Columbia, we have a bunch of dams there, and most of our electricity comes from hydroelectric energy. So that's kind of a local source that is predominant here. Now, the third most common, which again, we will learn more about this unit, is going to be nuclear. energy. And nuclear energy uses this process of uranium fission where it releases heat, which then is going to turn water into steam. And when this steam is released, it's going to, again, be spinning a turbine, which generates electricity. So it still results in this spinning turbine, but it ended up just having different starts to this process. But those are going to be fossil fuels as top, then hydroelectric, and then nuclear. Again, this is on a global scale when we're looking at it. So the next concept here is going to be how we relate development with fossil fuel consumption. So as development in a country increases, fossil fuel consumption then also increases. So most residents of less developed nations depend on what's known as subsistence fuels. And these are going to be where you have biomass that can easily be gathered or purchased and then burned in order to get heat for a home. So examples of these might be like wood, charcoal, dried animal manure, and this can ultimately lead to deforestation when you are needing those trees for your fuel and you have to go and cut them down to get it. So if we look here, this might be an example of some biomass that's been accumulated. Maybe this guy's taking it back to his house and he's going to be burning it for fuel. Here's going to be a picture of this burning, which is able to be used not only for warmth, but this person's using it for cooking. And this is wood, so it's a subsistence fuel. Now, as we have economic development happening, this leads to more affluence and wealth, which leads to a higher per capita GDP. So like the wealth of the people and the nation is growing, which then is going to increase the energy usage because you're going to start having access to things that require electricity. So you're going to start having more gadgets. You're going to start having nicer homes. You're going to start having like appliances and things like that, which are going to come with the need for more energy in order to power them. So if we look here at this diagram, you can see how as GDP grows, we also are seeing energy per capita grow. So up here, we've got some places like United States and South Korea and Norway. And then down here, we've got like Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. And so you can see that as we become more developed, you are going to be using more energy because you now have the wealth to purchase the things that require this increased energy. So as these developing nations develop more, fossil fuel consumption is going to increase because remember that fossil fuels are the biggest source of energy providing right now. And so as we get more countries that are needing more energy, you're going to need more fossil fuels. You're going to need more oil for the gasoline for the cars that they can now purchase. You are going to need more coal and natural gas for the electricity in the homes and also for the larger scale manufacturing that's going on an economic level. And so development is going to lead to energy, increased energy, which is going to lead to increased need for fossil fuels. Now, there are some factors that can affect the energy source use. The big one is going to be availability. As you are aware, fossil fuels are a limited resource. They will not go on forever. So they depend on the discovery of reserves and the accessibility of being able to access these reserves. And the use of fossil fuels is going to vary heavily when it comes to the availability and our options for getting it out of the ground. So if you look at this diagram here, this is looking at natural gas production. And you are going to see over the years, like how much of this natural gas was produced. Around 2008 to 2010-ish is going to be when fracking started becoming a thing. And fracking, which we will talk about more this unit, is a way that you're able to get natural gas that is stuck in geologic rock layers. And so as you see the production, once fracking became an option, that definitely increased in production there. Now, another thing that is going to affect fossil fuels is going to be the prices of them. Now, fossil fuel prices are going to fluctuate dramatically. This is why you see your cost at the gas station change so much from month to month potentially. And this price is going to fluctuate dramatically based on new reserves or depletion of existing ones. So, as I said, when we had fracking, making it so that we had increased availability, this was going to decrease the price, which increases its use because now that it's more affordable, we all want it. So if you look here again, around that 2008 mark where fracking kind of started becoming a big thing, we saw the amount that we had increase, and you also see a drop for a bit of the cost of them because it was new. We now all of a sudden had a lot of it available to us, which dropped the cost, which then made more people want it, which then made the cost go up. So it fluctuates, as you can see. And this is going to be, sorry, I kind of forgot about this picture here. This one is going to be showing us the global primary energy consumption by source. So if we look over time, this blue line here is going to be more of your traditional biofuels, the woods and like burning coal, stuff like that. And so as this goes down, we are seeing more coal being used. Sorry, I said coal in the last one. I meant charcoal. As wood and charcoal goes down, we are seeing more coal. And then over time, we're slowly starting to see a little bit more in some of these more sustainable ones. But overall, this is due to the fact that the past couple hundred years, we have had a lot of countries moving to more developed. So we're having way less of this wood needing to be used. Some other factors that can affect energy source use is going to be government regulation. And this is a really important one for you to pay attention to, especially for the AP test, because there's a good chance that you might be asked what a government could do in order to cause changes. And especially when we're talking about energy sources, it's important to know what the government actually has the ability to do. So here's some things that they can do. The government can regulate the types of energy sources that are being used. So, for example, they can mandate certain energy source mixes, such as a government can mandate that by the year 2025, all states are using 25% renewable sources of energy. So that's a regulation that they can do, which would then encourage their country to move forward with using more renewable sources. The government cannot directly raise or lower prices of energy sources. And this is one that people will get wrong on the AP test. So you want to make sure this is not something that you do if you're asked this question. The government cannot just say, oh, well, oil is, we're gonna make oil more expensive. So gas is now going to be $10 a gallon. So on the AP test, you can't say like, the government should just raise the price of oil and then people won't do it, because the government doesn't actually have the ability to do that. Some things that they can do is they can do tax increases to discourage companies from building fossil fuel power plants. So they could impose taxes on new power plants being used and just make it so expensive that it's not really worth it. Or they can give rebates or tax credits to encourage companies building more renewable energy power plants. So maybe you get a tax credit where you get money back on your taxes if you create a plant that is going to be based on more like energy efficient things. And there's a lot of businesses that do apply for these type of tax credits. In fact, as a homeowner, I can get tax credits for the government for literally installing more energy efficient furnaces in my house or a more energy efficient water heater. I can get tax breaks from the government for that. And that's because the government can give rebates to encourage companies and individual people to go for things that are going to be using renewable energy or are going to be more energy efficient. So if you look At this diagram here, this is going to be the percentage of electricity that is produced through renewable sources. You'll notice the United States is not doing too hot on here because the more green it is, the more renewable sources we have. And so this is just kind of what it looks like worldwide when we're looking at renewable source usage. And here is the United States, which congrats. Well, Washington is actually doing amazingly, partly because our state tends to have a little bit more forward approaches when it comes to energy usage and regulations and rebates and stuff like that. But also, it's a little misleading. It's not totally like our state just decided to be awesome. It's mostly the fact that we have 3 major rivers here. And so building dams made the most sense. And so majority of our energy production comes from dams, which are considered renewable because until the rivers run out, we will continue to have water flowing. So that is the main thing that is driving here in the Pacific Northwest. We have more renewable energy sources, but congratulations, you are in a state that is doing better than some of the others. So here's going to be your practice FRQ for 6.2. And this is going to be a skill where you are going to do some practice with calculating a numeric answer. So you're going to be doing a little bit of math here. So there's going to be a couple practice problems that I want you to do. The first one is from 2005 to 2018, the annual investment in renewable energy sources in the United States increased from 11.4 billion to 46.5 billion. Calculate the percent change in renewable energy investments in the United States from 2005 to 2018. Then the next one is a different math problem here. Experts estimate that for the United States to reach 100% renewable energy in 2050, it will require $7.8 trillion. Calculate the percent change this would represent from the 2018 investment level of 46.5 billion. All right, so that's going to be your practice FRQ for 6.2, and those were your notes on 6.2.